Alrighty guys, just wanted to make a video about the supposedly fake 3.19 leak, and I just want to basically talk about it and just discuss what some of these changes would mean for the game. More or less, just think of it like a conspiracy theory, right? It's fun just to think about and talk about and just have an open discussion about. You can take all this with a grain of salt. I think some of this is very in line with what could and should potentially happen in the game. Some of it I feel would be silly and hopefully it doesn't come true, but I just want to talk about what these changes would make if they were implemented. Like I said, some people think that because Beck said, "Oh, it's clearly a fake thing," take her word for it. Uh, that's like literally asking someone if they're scamming you. It's like, "Oh, am I being scammed?" Of course not. Why would they ever tell you the truth on that, right? So if these were 3.19 leaks, something from Beck's saying it's all fake doesn't really ring true to me personally anyway. So just putting that out there. Anyway, let's basically angle this from a purely speculative point of view, right? And we'll go over the changes and what they would essentially mean for the game, whether it would be healthy or not. Just have an open dialogue just for fun. I think that this little write up has been pretty cool, pretty well thought out by who actually did it, but obviously this is not the whole lot of it. But let's just go with what we currently have, right? So Nightblade, remove the crit damage from the elusive thing or whatever. This would be a very balanced thing to happen, right? Like, unfortunately, as it currently stands, Nightblade is a little bit overtuned, right? I don't know if you would have to fully remove this, but the problem is that this is a lot of multi, also with a lot of base. You know what I mean? Like, this is borderline as good as the actual increased critical strikes gem for how much crit you actually get out of it, plus the crit multi. Like, it's a very good hybrid of the two, along with the increased critical strike chance, along with elusive. And then, yeah, it's very, very strong. Increased elusive effect as well is just absolutely nutty. Then you've got abuse with alternate quality. There's a lot of things about this that make this gem underused and yet still really overpowered. Like, a lot of people can't always fit this into the build, but like, it's becoming more and more popular, more and more meta, and especially obviously with 12 link weapons in the game, this becomes a bit of a concerning issue. It becomes a very strong gem link. Also, for league start on poison builds, it's very, very easy to grab Nightblade in a build. Just grab a white claw, make a tree to give yourself 100% poison, and grab perfect agony on the tree. And basically, with literally no damage on the weapon whatsoever, and just like, a poison helix or something like that, you can do tier 16s and bosses, even guardians, quite comfortably on a white weapon. So it is a very powerful layer with poison in combination with pretty much Nightblade and perfect agony synergies. So it's very, very strong, and obviously this would need to be nerfed by comparison to everything else. So this one, it also hurts the top end, right? Like, obviously a lot of the guys with their 150 mil lightning strike characters are also abusing this on 12 link claws. Yet again, a 12 link claw kind of should have that much damage if you think about it, but I can see why it presents an issue. So yeah, a Nightblade nerf, very likely to happen, probably should happen. In my opinion, this would actually be good for the game personally. Although it does put poison in a very odd spot where it's not particularly great end game and not particularly great early game. So maybe that would encourage them to actually look into poison scaling and how it works, because right now it is a very unclear sort of clusterfuck. Like, scaling poison damage is not much fun these days. Anyway, speaking of lightning strike, the single attack of lightning strike now only damages a single target once. I'd be okay with this. As you guys know, lightning strike is by far the best melee skill in the game right now, the most efficient, even still clunky, right? Like, it's got all the problems, but the real issue is the fact that you have nothing else to basically compare it to. Also, I think one of the problems that we have in this game right now is that GGG refuses to look at melee, why there are still, mirror tier versions of lightning strike going around that they think all melee functions like. Like, the last time I played a physical cycloner and had a good time was basically years ago, right? Like the Legion League almost. And now it just doesn't work that way, right? So melee has been in a particularly bad spot for a fairly long time, and yes, money can help fix the problem, but it shouldn't be anywhere near as bad as it currently is. And then also we've got the problem of, you being in melee range and always needing more defenses than the average player will, whereas I can just grab a range character, get twice as much damage, and shoot from far back. Then we have the added issue that they'll never probably address, which is scaling on melee really sucks because there's so many ways to double your damage, whether you got two Val totems up, you've got double damage on your weapon, then you've got like crazy amounts of flat scaling, and then I can't even remember all the other stuff there is, man, but I whinge about it all the time. The problem is you're doubling your double damage, and then you basically have normal damage, and then that's why everything else that can't access the double damage doesn't seem to scale properly, right? Like you're always trying to put down your Val skills, you're trying to have 50 rage on the build, and you've also got Berserk ticked at the same time. You're constantly pressing your Nightblade to get your elusive on, you know what I mean? Sorry, you're always pressing your withering step to keep it up, you know what I mean? Just spamming these buttons, and it is a clusterfuck of damage multipliers to basically make melee work in the average game, and they can't work out why there's such a big difference between someone that's got a 1000 PDPS weapon that can't do tier 16s versus Lightning Strike on a much more fair budget, and somehow they've got 150. It's silly. The scaling's all out of whack. Melee does need a massive review, and hopefully getting rid of Lightning Strike will be one of the first things to really start to push that button on how bad Melee is and how much they really need to address scaling. Anyway, Tornado Shot. This one would pretty much kill the skill if it's read to be or interpreted the way it should be, which is obviously you could only have one arrow, so one actual tornado shot, and then basically the number of projectiles would only be the child arrows, aka the secondary. Now, hopefully we're reading that wrong, because that would be like the worst case scenario. I always figure you could literally gut the damage just by getting rid of the secondary projectile in a lot of ways, because if you couldn't get the additional secondary projectile, it gets harder to overlap, and you got to think for every projectile you add, you'd be down one more projectile, right? So it would still be just as effective to basically still be able to do GMP and get more of a spread, and then there'd still be some overlapping, but you'd be down a lot of damage, 30, 40, 50% on Tornado Shot. So that would be the way I'd hope to interpret this, because the other way is basically one Tornado Shot goes out, and that just has a lot of arrows associated with it. Would absolutely destroy this thing to the point of like unusable. You'd basically only use it for mapping, and even then you would probably just pick a better skill. You'd just go lightning arrow or something. So the way to read this is probably going to be the other way around. It will probably be you can only get one or two, whatever it is right now, secondary arrows, and maybe you can actually no, they probably wouldn't even have the enchant, right? And then you can only stack up the number of projectiles that come out. You know what I mean? That would be the best way. Explosive arrow, obviously, ballistas would now be calculated independently. This means that each totem would only be able to get their 20 stacks on a much lower thing, so it wouldn't pop off and reach its 20 fuses so quick. This would significantly bring down explosive arrow. It wouldn't kill it, I don't think. Maybe. It would definitely hurt the budget. But, yet again, it would bring it more in line with other things. It would be a very appropriate nerf. So, this one's kind of heavy-handed. Hopefully it doesn't end up being like this. Like I said, hopefully it's more like the second option. This one here, a little bit heavy-handed. Probably going to take it out of the meta. Wouldn't completely kill it, so this is actually not too bad. It would, obviously depends on how much you like that build, right? I'm sure you'd be absolutely gutted. The split effect of Sniper's Mark now has a cooldown on it. Now this is an interesting one because there's a lot of builds that abuse this, and we were actually planning on doing a cast on crit version of Blazing Salvo, basically abusing the Sniper's Mark thing. So if you guys don't know about this, basically what would happen is you would trigger your cast on crit, you would have Blazing Salvo come out, and then the Sniper's Mark would actually create smaller projectiles that also overlap. This basically stops, to my knowledge, just Blazing Salvo abuse, but I have heard that there is many other cases where you can get overlapping projectiles that manage to hit the target extra times by using Sniper's Mark abuse. So this was a build that we were potentially going to play. Now pretty nerfed. Like it would be very significant, but this is an abusive mechanic. I'm okay with seeing it gone out of the game. It also makes doing your path of building calculations more fair and honest, right? Because obviously you can't just sit there and put, I've got 3 extra projectiles and, rocket up your damage for no real reason. Wouldn't completely kill it. Like, obviously you could still get some abuse, just nowhere near the level that it currently was. Fire dot nerf, fire trap nerf. Pretty much only really affects RF. And I already said this before, but RF wasn't really doing that much damage. It was more the fact that you had fire trap. This would just basically make RF single target more in line with what RF playstyle is like. Still be fine, but, RF is basically a walking simulator. GGG hates walking simulators. The fact that RF could even get a few mil damage was kind of amazing for RF, and then basically a lot of your single target came from the fire trap, obviously. So this would be in line. It wouldn't completely gut it. It would just slow it down. That's fine. That's fine. All summon skills now have the attribute. Sorry, it says attribute or whatever. Explosive damage is now reduced by 60%. Now, this is kind of a funny one because it's, yet again, this me screams actually what GGG would do. And this would obviously hurt detonate dead. And kind of like a very generic nerf. The problem with this, in my opinion, is that just like in all GGG fashion, this thing essentially would gut SRS pop and popcorn builds in general, right? Because obviously they count as an explosion. And it's like, well, that just hurts anyone using like the, what's that Infernal one again? Basically where you make your minions do burning damage and then they explode and they die. And then you have basically explosive minions, right? And they're kind of fun. They're not particularly that strong. We do use it for leveling. This would essentially kill that build just to, you know, appease people, which unfortunately, right, it is so in line with GGG philosophy to hurt the top end. You often nuke absolutely everything related to it, right? So popcorn might legitimately die to basically be a sacrificial lamb so that DD is brought more in line, and I think that would be shit. But unfortunately, that is notoriously what GGG has done to nerf things, you know, in the past. So DD might just barely hold on and just barely live and pop out the meta and not be a tier 1 racing skill, which is probably more important to mention, right? But now, basically, no one will ever be able to play popcorn again. And that would be shit, but that would be very much what happens 90% of the time GGG fails to nerf something. They'll nuke everything in, you know, in the vicinity of it as well. Alright, so sublimation seems to be just another word that comes up for Ascendancy. Makes sense, right? The whole thing's been translated from Chinese. Champion Fortitude has been reworked so that it only works when you hit a monster with a melee strike, basically, right? It says you get maximum effect, so this means that it would work for someone that has a very low hit. Now, this is more or less just annoying and terrible quality of life. And it does kind of make the champion feel really shitty. So this obviously stops people from, you know, like you could still do, right? And this is awful. You could still do the old weapon swap, hit them, swap it back, and then do your bow. Absolutely terrible for bow builds. We won't end up doing that. So Fort is dead. Pardon me. For bow builds, and obviously this would also still hurt anyone that does a spellcaster version or anything along those lines. Now, ironically, for cast on crit, this would actually still work great, because I'll obviously be striking with melee, and now it goes to the maximum protection. So this actually would be a boost for cast on crit versions of Champion, or Scion in this particular case, right? So I'm kind of excited about that, assuming it doesn't go off my hit damage. So that would actually put the Scion slightly stronger for the, you know, the hybrid that is cast on crit. Mostly just for Scion though. But yeah, this would definitely stop spellcasters and everyone else sort of going for this. Wouldn't stop any of the other characters that normally go it. So like your Lightning Strike character, if they still exist later down the track, would still be using it. But yeah, basically bow characters just got a huge nerf in terms of defenses, which were already not great. But I always said to people, man, the best defense on ranged is the fact that you're not getting hit in the first place. Alright, Inspiration, go figure, they're changing the Curse Aura from 30 to 20. I'm perfectly okay with that. No reservation effect down to reservation effect is 100%. It's basically the same thing. It's basically the same thing, but it just means that you can't do some shenanigans with, can't remember what it is, like that ring. Let's not worry about that one too much, but basically it's a very minor nerf. I didn't even think it was that bad. I think it just comes down to the fact that everyone's using the one that gives you evasion and that sort of stuff. They just want that to be slightly nerfed. This is Deadeye, so Sharp Eyes is probably just code name for Deadeye, right? And Sublimation, Ascendancy, Unlimited Ammo rework, so this would be the multi, so the extra +2 proj and 50 AoE has now been apparently turned into, like, we don't know what this one is, probably LMP or GMP, level 10. And that would be pretty bad, not gonna lie. I'm assuming it's greater multiple projectiles instead of lesser. But this means that you would then have the less damage multiplier with it, which would be pretty rough. And it also means that you would probably no longer grab this as a gem link. So you're down a gem link, even just to make up for this. And sometimes you just don't have the extra gem link there. You actually want the +2 projectiles and the GMP. This would be another massive nerf to Tornado Shot. Pretty bad. Obviously, with the Sniper's Mark rework, it says the focus point has been reworked. Basically, this just changed how it goes. You get a level 30 Sniper Mark. The cooldown goes down to 4 seconds. Doesn't say it's changeable either, but we'll see this in the full patch notes. Total damage reduced by 25%. Yet again, that is strong defensively. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's already kind of a thing I don't want to take half the time. Pretty bad changes. Changes to radar. Obviously, for this one, it will be the Veiled Goddess. So you go from 50%. Is this ailment avoidance, right? Chance to avoid ailments to 35. This would basically stop you getting it from free because basically, right now, I basically just grab a pair of boots and that pretty much caps me out for ailment avoidance. Where is it? In the mid tier on Toxic Rain, you can literally just reach your cap by doing the boots, right? You can just do crafted chance to avoid ailments and avoid ailments on the I forgot what they're called now, the Searing Exarch or the other one. I can't remember which one it is now. Eater of Worlds. I'm pretty sure it's Eater of Worlds. And you can get 50% ailment avoidance there, plus your Ascendancy. Boom. Ailment avoidance taken care of. Now you're going to need to get it on your gloves as well. So it's just kind of a little bit neater. And it really kind of roughs it up for someone that wants to get 100% spell suppression. Basically, speaking of spell suppression, that was the next thing to get nerfed. Yet again, you could already get 100% spell suppression on a Raider without a single piece on gear, just through the tree alone. This just makes it slightly harder to do and would probably encourage a few more people to lower their evasion a little bit and probably just get Mage Blood, because obviously this would pretty much make up for the difference with the spell suppression. As you can see, like on a more min-max character, you'll definitely get it out of this, but yeah. This means maybe more people will take Mage Bane in the start until they can get it on gear. Same thing. This is Occultist. Forbidden Power can now also just be, basically goes from 6% to 4%. Power charge stacking is probably the strongest it's ever been this league in particular. It getting nerfed down to be more in line with other things. It hurts. It's not the biggest deal. Just think to yourself, if you had 10 power charges, you go from 60% increased damage down to 40. The AoE is probably the biggest one. You're going to lose like 20% AoE on a 10 power charge stacker. Kind of hurts, especially considering they're so popular for like auto bombers and stuff. But yeah, again, it's not the end of the world. Very in line. Also, it's really popular. They kind of want to take it down a peg or two. It's also not the only nerf that they got coming towards Occultist, which people have talked about, does need it. This one here, I'm going to assume, obviously, you guys can tell what it is. It's basically just the Explodey. They're basically taking it down from 40% chance to 25. I've got 10% chance on my Forbidden Right character. It's plenty. It's enough depending on your build. So if you were just relying on Explode before, you're still relying on it. It's just slightly less reliable. It's not the biggest deal in the end of the world, you know what I mean? Like, think to yourself, you got 2 Oblivion ones, you're at basically 75%. Crazy. Same one here. Summoner. Can't even remember what this one is. The dedication skill triggers every 5 seconds, something like that. I'm not really worried about that. Inquisitor, same thing. Consecrated Grounds. Can't even remember, man. These ones I'll just kind of skip over. They're not really too important just yet for anything else. Physical damage taken, Soul Ring. I'm going to assume that that's for your ward loop, obviously, the Moonstone Ring. Then reducing the physical damage, I'm pretty sure might make it nearly impossible to trigger your cast when damage taken feedback loop for loopers. So pretty much, if it does come out, that's the end of ward loop, right? I know it's people's favorite build. It is overtuned and it is kind of overpowered. It makes sense that it would get nerfed. I'm just going to put that out there. So, other one here. This one would be... Oh my lordy. So this is obviously Flesh Fusion is probably Melding of the Flesh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what we call it, right? It's on like every fucking build out there. And they basically said that they would change its resistance value to basically reduce percentage, the same as Destructive Light. That would be your what's the name of this bloody thing again? The Annihilating Light, I think. No, I swear I have one somewhere. Staff. This one, right? Yeah, the Annihilating Light. So it'd be reduced elemental res. Now this would hurt a lot of builds, even on the top end or bottom end. Honestly, you would have to give up a flask slot now, and probably everyone will end up running a 4th flask being a bismuth with a mage blood to fix this. So already, most of the builds that can run Melding of the Flesh still use extra attributes as it is, because I've got tier 1 res rolls on all my gear, and sorry, most of it, right? I've got res on all my gear everywhere I can, and I'm still always short on res. So basically, if it had this modifier instead, I would probably need to swap my 4th flask to a Bismuth, which yet again would lower the power of Mage Blood for defenses, which is fine, and then make gearing even harder again. And you know what? That would be kind of a perfect nerf if you think about it, right? Provided, right? Provided that they do make it more like the Annihilating Light, where it's 60% and not 70 to 80. If they go to 80% reduced elemental res, it would be nearly impossible to ever use it in a build. So hopefully they're very, very conscious of not keeping it at 70%, and they do make it more like the Annihilating Light, which is 60, because otherwise it is too much at 70 to 80%. It's very crazy. Obviously, the Resolve Iron Flask, or Lost One or whatever, another nerf to Looper, it's fine. Actually, kind of any of the Ward characters so far. Dead Reckoning, quality of life, it's not that big of a deal, really, to be honest. I don't know if people are like, oh, the build's dead. I'd be more worried about some of the other stuff they got coming. The Phantom Sacred Shield, I'm pretty sure is code name for Aegis Aurora. And this one would basically turn it, rather than getting your energy shield straight back after recovery. Sounds like it gives you recovery, as in turns into regen. Regen would be absolutely atrocious in the near future, so I'm assuming that means you get it back maybe over 4 seconds instead, or something along those lines. But it would pretty much kill Aegis Aurora in a lot of ways. I'd prefer to see them drop it down to 1%. You know what I mean? 1% of damage prevented, and then just hit the max res on it. You know what I mean? Because obviously that still hurts the combo of the two. You'd have to make up for that on a chest slot or getting max res elsewhere. And yet again, would be half as effective as it was before. So hopefully they don't go with this one. It would be shit, but that's, yet again, would not surprise me if that's what GGG plans to do. The Dawnbreaker Giant Shield didn't really need this nerf, but I can kind of see why they would. This one would also be bad. The Squire getting nerfed to socket color can't be changed would be a shit nerf, absolutely shit. Because think about this, it doesn't even remotely change the functionality of it. It just means getting the color is hard, so you would turn an extremely rare drop, an extremely expensive one, into an unusable item because it doesn't have the colors you're after. That would not make the Squire less powerful. It would make it shit to get a bad one. You know what I mean? Imagine you get the Squire drop. You're like, oh my god, yeah, man, that's fucking 50x in the pocket. And then you go to price check it. Ooh, wrong colors, bro. 1C. Literally how things go with that, right? Think about the difference between all the Skin of the Lords, which are far more generic and useful because they're 6 links, but then do that with the Squire. You would very, very rapidly see a price shift, and this would be terrible for the Squire. Absolutely unnecessary. It would just be bad across the board. So I see no point in them ever doing this. So I'm going to assume that this one won't go through to the Keeper, or the second we see the official manifesto about it, riots start, and then hopefully changed by the end of this. I would 100% kick up a stink about this. This does not make the Squire functionally different and actually nerf it. It makes it possible to roll a fucking shit one, which is not great for something with a great, with this rare. And yet again, it's not going to stop the top player from getting it. It's going to mean that there's less for everyone to go around, which means if I get the Squire with the correct colors from the POB, it's now a mirror because there's only 3 of them in the server, and then you can't play my build, someone else's build, because you didn't get the right colors, and then price fixing becomes an issue. This would be a shit change. Look, TLDR, if GGG is ever considering this, don't. Learn from your past mistakes about doing this. It's absolutely shit. What is this, 8% to 4%? Oh yeah, this is basically just for stackers or whatever. It's fine. it hurts a little bit, but Omniscience is still fucking absolutely insane, right? Blessed Rebirth basically no longer means permanently immune minions while you summon them, kind of thing. This would be pretty rough, not gonna lie. This would definitely hurt all minion builds. It is what it is, man. It is what it is. We'll see. Mana Reserve. This would actually be pretty smart balance-wise. I'm not going to lie. I'm pretty sure I've already discussed this today about how, Ashes of the Star is only good because of its reserve, and you can replace that in one cluster for a fraction of the price, along with get basically like right here. That's 24. Yeah, that's 24 mana reservation, right? Which is still sick and still effective even today. And I get the attributes and the intelligence roll and all this kind of stuff. Like, this nerf would suck. It would suck, but that just means I would need 2 cluster jewels, which is actually a pretty powerful sacrifice over 3. It would suck. I'm not going to lie. It definitely would suck. But it's probably the last change you'll ever see to mana reservation. It'd probably be about as bad as it gets. So hopefully after this, they're done with mana reservation. I'd be okay with it. Although I must admit, 6% does seem to neatly fit the right amounts. After this, it comes kind of inconvenient, but like, so obviously I've tested out like 4%, and I always keep losing an aura every single time, despite the fact that I already have 2. So it would be very, very inconvenient. It really would be. But GGG is all about inconvenience. So as much as I think 6 is perfectly balanced, 4 would be harsh, and harsh is what GGG loves. So I would agree that this would probably happen. Alright, and pretty much the rest of these, outside of this one, Ashes of the Star and Omni being rare. Goodbye this out of your League starter POBs, which I hate seeing anyway, so yeah. I don't think this is good for the game. Obviously, they'd have to recheck the values. Ashes is already kind of rare. I've done nearly 100 bosses and haven't gotten either of these two. Even on Uber mode, even with Height of Hubris, all that shit doesn't really seem to make a difference in the drop rate. It is RNG. Seen some people get it in 30, 40. I myself have gone over 100. That's the RNG in this game, right? That's the game we play. Some people get it in their first fucking 10 of the league and rub it in. But now expect to see this a lot less at the start of the league. Which is whatever. I will put it out there just as food for thought. Obviously, Omni science here is a little bit different because, you know, you want like a full character even to make this thing work. Ashes fits particularly good at the start of the game, but I said is very, very replaceable later, unless you're actually doing something with alternate quality. Gating this behind endgame when it's very rarely or very seldom your best in slot. I know a lot of people say it is best in slot. They just haven't fucked around with it enough, right? Like, if you're not getting any benefit out of the increased effect on quality, it's not that great. It's just a +1 with some reserve, which, like I said, is just 1 cluster jewel in the current game. 1 cluster jewel replaces Ashes of the Star for a fraction of the price. And yet again, just if you could only get this after the first 3 months when it fucking finally drops, it would be completely garbage. By then you would just have a +2 with a life roll, with some stats, with some crit multi. God forbid you get something else on there, like some more reserve, like you get the 50% zealotry or something. Like, this thing just, Ashes can very easily be replaced by a good rare. And if you make it too rare, by the time this shit rolls around, it becomes useless unless you want the quality. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it. Anyway, it's all just food for thought. It wasn't meant to be this long, but I kind of wanted to go over and give like an in-depth my thought on all these possible changes that could happen. My summary is basically, even though this has been touted as fake and some of these options are very, very shit, they're kind of very much in line with GGG's previous history. So whoever even bothered to fake this thing did a pretty good job sort of working out how they do it, because it's got that feel of, hey man, they've nerfed the top skill and they've wiped out every other skill in the path of it. That is kind of very much GGG's methodology, right? Like, oh, has anyone seen any of the like old builds come back? They don't care about old builds, man. If they obsolete 8 builds in the process of nerfing one of them, and that one stays usable but the rest of them die, that is GGG's way of doing things. So you're like, oh, Lightning Strike will become obsolete, and then Melee will be like even more in the shitter. But then you won't have to whinge about why Lightning Strike is the best, right? You might try a new skill and then work out that Blade Flurry still works. It's not as good as Lightning Strike, but it still works. Like, this is very much how GGG works. You know what I mean? And also, you know, it puts it in line with Frostblades. Frostblades still works, you know what I mean? Like, all these things are arguments for another day or whatever, but basically, this just, to me, screams very, very possible, very, very plausible. And to be honest, some of these I would like to see. I would actually like to see them nerf Lightning Strike so that they could truly start to address Melee's issues. because as soon as you lose the top dog, don't get me wrong, there'll be a number one to replace it in no time, but it will be a shadow of its former self, and we're still going to use Berserk. Like, yeah, I think these would be healthy for the game, even though obviously some of my builds are going to take a big hit. Melding of the flesh getting nerfed would be inconvenient on about 150,000 builds that it's on right now. Aegis Aurora nerf would be yet again just a massive nerf to defenses after they finally feel in a good spot. But yet again, we're going to see this on 70% of builds. It does have to take a backseat a little bit. I think they're heavy-handed. I think they're up for review, but try them out. See if recovery on block does a better job. I don't know, man. Maybe we start seeing recovery on block shields again. They were okay. Alright, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know how you feel about what I said. Maybe even cause some dialogue down in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. Peace out. Catch us all later.